Okay, hi everybody. I am Aaron of SIG Beard. Today is Tuesday, February 19th, and this is the weekly Kubernetes SIG testing meeting. We're all being publicly recorded, and we'll have our smiling faces posted to YouTube later, so please remember that we should all adhere to the Kubernetes Code of Conduct, which basically boils down to please don't be a jerk. Today on the agenda, I wanted us to lead with a discussion from Deval, who's one of the Kubernetes 114 release team test infra shadows, and just have a brief discussion sort of about how things have been going from the test infra side, what upcoming milestones are happening, both from the release team's perspective as well as from SIG testing's perspective, because I see some things about like Spyglass replacing Kubernetes and result store and stuff further on in the schedule. So I thought we could start there. Dewal, do you want to take it from there?
Yeah. So today we are supposed to cut a release. So we have a new 1.14 branch. Once we make those changes, we wanted to make changes to all the config files. Amit's pull request had all the approvals, but looks like that there is a conflict on the GitHub issues. So Sen and I are working on it right now, trying to resolve it. We're going to take another hour to get it resolved. Once the jobs are merged, we will see all the 1.13 jobs now running for 1.14 branch, and you'll see, and the test grid also would be updated. We have automation we have done the automation of all these manual tasks, and that is also on the review. So most of the manual tasks are now automated. We need to write a stitching script or a script that launches all this in order. So that is the only part that is pending. Of course, the review needs to be approved, and once I get the approval, it will get merged. Amit mentioned that if I do hold cancel, it should actually get merged, but it hey Cole. So Amit mentioned that if you do hold cancel, it should get merged, but it did not. Sen and I discussed today, and then probably he will do a review again and approve it. So we need to write a stitching script that will completely make sure that the test infra, whatever tasks we do today, are automated, and they can be run one by one.
I'm sorry, Dewal, what tasks that were once manual are now automated? Maybe I missed that.
Oh, whenever we cut a new release branch, all the jobs that are running for 1.13 should run for 1.14, that should run for 1.12, should run for 1.13. So you need to rotate the releases, deprecate the old jobs. Apart from that, you have to bump up Kubekins images if there is any Go changes, if the Kubekins Docker file needs to had new packages, etc. All of those need to be changed. Some of them are already documented, and some of them have already been automated. Some of them have been not. The documentation does not mention that. So some of the scripts are experimental. So we need to stitch all of them and make sure. And some of the scripts that are already there may have some bugs.
Okay.
So all of that.
Does this work for anything other than the release branches? Because we had just encountered this for our cloud provider, and I was thinking, for new versions of Kubernetes, it'd be great if we could just say for this particular entry, duplicate everything for a new version. These scripts specific to certain jobs, or?
Yeah, the bump up script works flat for, it bumps up all the images for all the config files, but for rotation of jobs, which you're talking about, I think rotation of release versions for each of the job. I think we have a specific set of scripts. These are pre-submit and some post-submit jobs that we have selected, saying we will do rotations only for those.
Okay, I'll talk to you about that offline.
There is a pull request and a list of jobs. You can check if that is there. I think I know what you're the issue you're referring to, but yeah, we can discuss offline.
One thing we did downstream too, and I don't know if this would work for Kubernetes, but we have a similar set of tooling doing similar things. And we just cut the 114 branch early, kept it fast forwarding to master, and then use that as a staging space for making sure that we could automate all the switches over. So that could be something we could consider for 115.
I mean, that's basically what we're starting right now. So we don't cut the branch until about halfway through the release cycle. So we cut the branch now, we're doing fast forwards, and then in about 2.5 weeks,
okay.
we go to code freeze.
I see.
Okay, so as far as I know, making sure we actually have the jobs and stuff up and running and green by the community meeting would be great. Are there any other major upcoming milestones that we, SIG testing, should be aware of from a release perspective, DeWalt?
I think in March we have code freeze in the first week. I don't remember the exact date. I need to pull out the schedule that we would help in, but apart from that, I don't see anything specific. We have a meeting tomorrow amongst all the test info folks to discuss the next tasks and distribute them across shadows and leads. So yeah.
Okay, that's March 7th for the record.
Okay.
From the SIG testing side, are there any major changes that we are trying to land that might impact test infra? One of the ones, before we get to like Kubernetes and stuff, one of the ones off the top of my head is Jeff Grafton was working on separating out all of the test tarballs. So the same way that we broke up the one Uber tarball for all architectures of Kubernetes client, server side, and client side, we were going to do the same thing for test tarballs. And it's unclear to me how much of that involves changing our CI setup to make sure that that stuff is appropriately sized.
Shouldn't be too much. I mean, there's basically one place, kubetest, that we're downloading this stuff, and we need to not break that script for everyone else as well.
Right.
Also not sure when that one's actually landing.
Okay.
Kubernetes Anywhere is also kind of dying a slow death, which is somewhere in the intersection of SIG testing and cluster lifecycle. And we are spinning up some kind stuff. It's unclear how much of that will be blocking and when. And I am looking to try to make shinier kubetest, but I wouldn't expect to make anything major depend on that probably until after the release.
Okay.
We will limp along and try to kill it with fire as soon as we can.
So there's like one kubeadm job on the release master blocking test grid right now. Is that stood up with Kubernetes Anywhere?
Yeah. And also because of HA going GA, hopefully, we may want to at least add to informing a kind HA job.
It's not going GA.
Yeah, it's not going GA. There's just actually, I'm sweeping through PEPs, like there's a certificate, there's something to do with certificates that's going to be made easier, but the actual overarching issue for HA is not going GA.
Okay.
It's pretty much staying alpha this cycle.
Yep. Okay. While Cole is here, I know that Prow is a little unstable. Is there anything we need to be aware of from that perspective as we go forward to release?
I guess the main thing to be aware of is that right now Prow's kind of in a weird limbo state. It is running in theory fine, but we can't really update it right now because of some mess ups and weird migration patterns that have been happening. We have a fix in progress, probably pretty close to done. Hopefully, I don't know that we're actually going to be able to try and update Prow today because I think by the time we get that fix in, it's going to be late afternoon. But I think we can try and actually do the update tomorrow. But none of the problems should be user facing since the Prow instance that's running is okay. It's just kind of old.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't want to spend a ton of time on all that tactical stuff, but I feel like now's a good time to remind everybody that we are over halfway through the release cycle. And so we start to get to that point where we want to think about what changes should we try to land before code freeze and what changes should we decide to maybe pull back on because they might seem a little too big or risky or disruptive. One of the major visible changes I know that's coming down the pike before we, let's just jump to that. Catherine, can you talk to us a little bit about Spyglass and Kubernetes?
Okay, so I didn't know I was talking about this until I saw it on the agenda, but we are intending to get rid of Kubernetes as mentioned, or at least deprecate Kubernetes job viewing as mentioned last week. I'm not going to do a demo again because I don't have one prepared and we still haven't deployed Prow, but basically the plan is that all the job links will point to Spyglass, test grid will point to Spyglass, everything except for PR dashboard will point to Spyglass or something else that runs inside Prow. Spyglass will have a link to Kubernetes for people who discover they don't like Spyglass, but they have some finite amount of time to tell us they don't like it before it goes away for good in like 2025 or something.
Will Kubernetes link to Spyglass?
Kubernetes already links to Spyglass, but Eric has suggested that the links should be bigger and more obvious, so I will do that too.
I also, correct me if I'm wrong, am under the impression that Spyglass is a tool used for viewing job artifacts and to some limited extent job history, but that there are other things that Kubernetes does, such as provide a PR dashboard that lists incoming and outgoing PRs. Correct. Which parts of Kubernetes are we trying to replace here?
So we are trying to replace Kubernetes log viewing and basically everything except the PR dashboard, which we do not consider deprecated, but also don't want to invest vast amounts of engineering time into and would like to replace sometime eventually. We have no plans.
Okay.
Everything else is replaced either with Spyglass or other parts of Prowl, like the PR history and the job history is in Prowl.
Okay. That sounds good. Have we demonstrated, I see Paris is here, have we demonstrated this at Contributor Experience?
We have not.
Okay. Paris, do you have room for us to demonstrate this stuff at Contributor Experience tomorrow? I will find out offline, and I'm not necessarily volunteering Catherine to do that demo. I just feel as though that's a good place to start some kind of roadshow to make sure that people are aware this is coming. And that the PR dashboard will still live for a while until we find something that is more convenient than that. Okay. Is it perma dark mode, perma light mode? Is there a switch? People need to know.
It's currently perma dark mode, and the rest of Prow is perma light mode. One day there will be a switch, but fixing the switch for the rest of Prow is really hard because it's a disaster. So,
okay,
that's what broke Prow. Cole's trying to fix is the switch.
Catherine, I'm really sad that my suggestions for improving the usability is not something that everybody can see, as opposed to.
PR is open, Eric. We can merge it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it looks fantastic, especially the fading out the message over the course of an hour very slowly.
I particularly like the shake animations.
The shake is the best part for me. It's got the rotation and the translation. It's got it all.
Maybe we can use that as for the Kubernetes, go to Spyglass notification.
It does make the links very, very, very obvious.
When I click on a link, I want the old Final Fantasy Overworld Go to Battle transition, where it rotates and fades in with the music. Every time I click a link, and then when you hit the back button, you want the dun 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 dun, the battle ended.
I also still want to see us implement the Istio thing where you like hover the logo and it spins.
But if you move your mouse, it spins faster?
Yeah, the Kubernetes wheel needs to spin around.
There you go.
You people are terrifying.
Presumably one day the Kubernetes wheel will become a foul logo, but you'll have a spinning boat.
Okay.
For what it's worth, Spyglass seems way easier to navigate because the links actually are titled in ways that make semantic sense. So it is a lot easier to click around and find the things that you're looking for.
Yes, I personally think Catherine's been doing a lot of amazing work on Spyglass. It is amazing. It is wonderful. It is more maintainable than Kubernetes. So I'm looking forward to us rolling this out. Anything else on that, or should we move on to something else on the agenda?
That is about it. It will hopefully happen on Friday-ish, assuming we deploy a prow soon, and we can send an email out and people can complain in time.
Okay.
I'm optimistic about us updating Prow tomorrow.
Feeling good.
Yeah.
On record.
Is this tomorrow because that's when the on-call handoff is?
I will stay on call and not make suffer for that, or at least help out with the update.
I think we should set a goal of having a February prow in February. We're running out of time here.
Okay, is Cosmin here to talk about design for cancellations? I didn't see them. Okay.
Eric and I are.
Do you guys want to talk about that, or would we rather have Eric talk about Results Store?
I would encourage people to maybe check it out. I feel like it's fairly, the most controversial thing in it is not actually super related to the actual change. So I feel like it's fairly, Cole, I think it would be nice if you could take a look at his doc. But I mean, the change he made, it seems like I'm pretty confident in the details he's put there. So I think that looks good. I don't know, Steve, if you have, I know there's the termination thing, but like you said, I don't really think that has to do with the actual.
I think the biggest question that I think I have is whether or not we want every single controller that runs for, every single controller that implements a proud job execution thing to also then have to implement its own cleanup and cancellation, or whether we want a
Oh my God, I'm dying here.
Yeah. My question is what is the dog's actual name?
The dog's name is
Bug.
Bug.
It's Bug. Bug is adorable.
Bug is
That's just the Bug's life right there, yeah.
This is why the PR was a little bit delayed.
Bug really adds to your gravitas of what you're saying. Little squeaks after every other word.
Yeah, but yeah, so I think we. Yeah, so especially if we want more and more controllers doing more types of jobs, is it something that we want every single person who's running a controller to have to implement their own cancellations? Do we just want a cancellation controller? I mean, I think there's some open questions about the larger view of it, and not necessarily whether or not the specific refactor he has is whether it will work, right?
Right.
We can always dry things out more as we get to that point.
Yeah. I mean, conceivably, this would be a really good win for the community from a cost perspective on just the sheer volume of jobs that we run. A lot of them are for pre-submits, and if I understand this proposal correctly, it's about immediately canceling a pre-submit if we know that there's another job that we need to run for it.
So it's about doing that for build jobs, because we already do that for prod jobs running as pods.
Okay. It's just for new types of execution platforms, like running against build or pipeline.
Does Crowd.K8s.io actually have this turned on for Kubernetes jobs, though?
Yes.
Okay. I thought it never mind.
Recall that it's only for
I think there's actually, it'll definitely cancel the proud job, but I think it might actually allow the pod to continue running. I think there is some because I think there is some other setting where we know that it's not safe to terminate pods, which is the other discussion that Steve and I are sort of a side channel having. But I think that's
because things aren't on Bosco's.
Right.
We terminate the proud job, but we allow the pod to complete normally.
terminating the pod would be useful.
We have that as a flag, but we have it turned off in Kubernetes Pro right now.
We're running it on ours, and I think the way that it works and the way that we sidestep the issues that Eric is mentioning is that we we set a long enough grace period on our tests for them to do the cleanup, and so then they exit when they exit, and we don't have leaks for resources. But if you're not on body bills, good luck.
Okay, that's what you just captured what I was wondering about. That I've seen this in Travis CI. If something gets canceled because something new enters the pipeline, then resource cleanup just doesn't happen. So the cancellation because some new job comes in can be more dangerous than it is useful.
Right. Yeah. So with potty bills, you can specify the grace period that pod is going to get to terminate.
The job.
Do you get a termination signal so that you know to? I mean,
yeah, totally. So when you delete a pod in Kubernetes, the containers get sent SIG term.
No, what I'm asking is whether I'll read the doc, but I was asking basically if the cancellation allows you to jump to some other step in the test workflow to do the teardown.
I think that this is probably under designed, and I think that this would be a good thing for us to start thinking about separately. Because there's probably more. It's fairly basic right now, and we haven't really done a whole lot, and maybe we don't want to do anything, and that's fine or whatever. But
yeah, I think that's basically exactly what I meant to write in that doc. Like the proposal as it is keeps things fairly basic. It just puts the onus on multiple controllers to do the same basic implementation. And I don't know if that's what we want to do right now, or if we want to actually think about what we want this to look like and start making some forward steps for that.
Okay. Sounds like we have a fun doc to look at, but we're all interested in it. So last thing I think we have time to get to on the agenda is, Eric, do you want to talk to us about Result Store? What is it? Why is it?
So Result Store is a place to store job results that is not GCS. And so I have some examples up. This is actually fairly similar to actually the data store that Google uses internally with TestGrid. And so we will have TestGrid support reading from this externally as well. And so the prow.case.io instance has the ability to upload the metadata to there. And so I have a utility that is doing that. And yeah, so I mean, for various reasons, like the fact that not everybody has access to it right now, and it's not something that can live inside your Kubernetes cluster. I don't think this will ever replace Spyglass, but theoretically, it will allow better integration with TestGrid and potentially other fancier things, and it has the ability to be faster since it doesn't have to, since it uses a database rather than reading GCS files. Yeah, so I don't know. So I mean, there's a bunch of issues with it at the moment. Like we will upload our logs in a compressed format, which Result Store can't actually read right now. Yeah, I don't know. Sort of just FYI. I think eventually a controller will be reading the data that we have in GCS and moving it into Result Store on a sort of continuous basis. And we'll see if we can make that useful or not.
I'm shocked to hear you using anything with a database, Eric.
Hey, we are not managing the data. I'm fine with other people managing a database. That is their problem. Although I'm sure if I was on the Result Store team, I would say that we should replace everything with GCS, which is my general mindset. And never use a database, because databases are terrible. But
so are you saying that at some point we use Result Store instead of TestGrid? I guess I'm curious what this means for the release team.
No. Depending on... TestGrid is more like a graphical view, right? And this is more similar to Spyglass, except theoretically it will allow, like, at some point, it doesn't have searching right now, but I could imagine that since it is a database, you could sort of say, hey, I want to find results that failed with this error message or something in the future. But for right now, I think the use is this is sort of just supplemental, and it may have a longer history or maybe easier to find super old builds than in Spyglass or Test Grid, but will otherwise be fairly similar to Spyglass.
Hot take on this is, having looked at the UI, I think Spyglass will be more useful for us in the short term, but the storage part of it may be useful. There is like it is a way of actually storing the data structured and searchable and things, and the API will be useful for things like test code without us necessarily like full on switching to it, like using it as a backend.
It sounds maybe like it's more of a replacement for the massive BigQuery data set that we currently generate by scraping things out of GCS, right?
I feel like really it's a replacement for started.json and finished.json. In JUnit.xml. Like essentially it is taking the started, finished, and JUnit files and putting that into a database, and then otherwise it is doing the exact same stuff as before.
You just described the BigQuery data set.
Yeah.
Could we also put a backup of that database in start.json and then name it with a field that nobody understands? Just so
yes.
Recover in case something happens.
As long as there's like 3 different ways to name the field,
yeah,
then we have to upload them all.
One should be camel case, one needs to be snake case, and one needs to be hyphenated.
All right. I need to head out.
Okay. Cole, did you have any?
I was just going to say that I think the main benefit is that we didn't make it. We should not be reinventing every little utility that Prow needs. There's tons of things that are made by other people and are a lot more full-featured and robust, and we should just.
On that note, there was a request that came in from SIG Release, I believe, yesterday or this morning, asking for a dashboard that would let them search, issue GitHub queries, get the results from the GitHub queries in tabular format, and let people add comments and annotations to the table. I tagged you in it, Cole, and I figure that sort of falls into the same comment where like we don't currently have any way to run stateful web apps simply, like it's just not something Prow does, and this seems like something we could just get from somewhere else.
I think weren't you just using a tool that does that?
Ish. This is a conversation we got to take offline though. I'm sorry, we're losing our room. So happy Tuesday, everybody. Squeak, squeak, squeak.
See you later, guys.